Satan Prasanga.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, and welcome to today's session. How are you doing? I pray that all is well with you and your families at this time. So we're moving on to the next letter today, and it's a beautiful letter to Satsvarupa Maharaj. And it's also written in the earlier years, 1968, so you'll see that the format is a little different. Prabhupada was writing very detailed, Sri Dandi Goswami. We've seen it also in the earlier letters, so very beautiful, detailed information about ISKCON, founder Acharya and things. And then we see that later on he changes that mood a bit, but at least up to 68 he's definitely writing a lot of detail in these letters. So let's go through this letter. It says, Sri Dandi Goswami A.C. Bhakti Vedanta Swami Acharya, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, ISKCON, Radha Krishna Temple, 3720 Park Avenue, Montreal, 18 Quebec, Canada, June 16th, 1968. So a lot of detail given there. We see the later letters, Prabhupada doesn't add so much of detail as he's doing in these earlier letters. So he goes on to say, My dear Satsvarupa, please accept my blessings. I thank you very much for your letter of June 12, 1968. So we see Prabhupada wrote the letter within 4 days. This letter is dated 16th. The letter was received on the 12th. So within 4 days, Prabhupada has responded. There was a lot of information. It was a long letter. So I took out like the essential part that I thought could be relevant to us, in which we can learn something. In today's letter, Prabhupada describes or discusses a very, very deep philosophical point in Hinduism and in Vedic culture based on understanding the comparative study between Ram Leela, Krishna Leela and Chaitanya Leela. And please remember, this is 1968. I was so shocked to see what a beautiful summary Prabhupada has consolidated and made into very understandable information, how to reconcile the activities of Ram, of Krishna and of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because when we look at the Leela, it's not understandable. Why does he behave in that way? Why did Ram banish Sita? Why? So many questions that comes up. So Prabhupada is explaining, and he's explaining this to Westerners. Please bear that in mind. He's explaining this to Westerners who have never been introduced to the Vedic culture before. But just see how they also think, and just see how Prabhupada explains. It's so amazing. So he starts by explaining a point about Dasarat Maharaj, the father of Lord Ram. So it starts like this. Maharaj Dasarat, although he was a great devotee of the Lord, but because he was a Kshatriya king, accepting one's promise is inevitable for him. So he's explaining the point that firstly in Ram Leela, a lot of the behavior shown there is shown because they're acting as kings. Krishna says in Gita, Yad Yad Acharati Shreshas Tat Tat Evataro Jana Sayat Pramana Kurute Lokas Tat Anuvartate. That whatever activities great men do, common men follow. And whatever examples they set by exemplary activity, the whole world pursues. So this verse is the summary of Ram Leela. So those activities we can't reconcile in our heart, in our mind, we can reconcile with this verse, that they are behaving as the ideal human being. And the king is the ideal human being. Therefore, we find in Srimad Bhagavatam many of the stories and leelas that are given there about kings. They're about kings, because when a king has an experience like that, the world wants to know, what did he do? How did he handle it? And if he handled it that way, then I should handle it this way, being a layman. So that's the idea behind it. So Prabhupada is explaining here that when a Kshatriya is behaving that way, why he behaved that way, that when a Kshatriya gives his promise, he must hold on to it. He must fulfill his promise. So Dasarath gave his promise to his wife Kaikai, and now he's fulfilling that promise. Prabhupada goes on to say in the letter, he preferred to banish Ramachandra on the request of his wife on the principle of keeping his promise. So I've even heard people say that, maybe even Ram had some psychological damage to himself, because when it came to, for what his father did to him, there must be some psychological term for this. When one experiences something in childhood, then he does the same thing in adulthood. I don't know the technical jargon for it, but some people say like that Ram was banished by his father, therefore he did the same. As an adult, he banished his wife. No truth to it, but when you read this letter and you understand how Prabhupada is explaining why they behave that way, now you can understand. Because they're behaving as kings. Prabhupada goes on to say, in higher states of spiritual life, one can break even promises also, but they are devotees of comparative merit. So Prabhupada is explaining that ideal life would be to follow morality, dharma. But we see the even in a higher spiritual standard than that, you can even break that. And that's why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Arjuna that dharma, you abandon it. Sarva dharman parityaja mamekam saranam raja. That abandon all varieties of dharma. How can you abandon dharma? If Ram had to hear that, there'll probably be a fight between Ram and Krishna. Because Ram would say, what are you preaching here? You probably false avatar. But Krishna is only able to do that because of the opposite. He is Purna avatar. He is full avatar. He is avatari, the source of all other avatars. So the first level of humanity is to follow morality. Unless we follow some level of morality, how would we have any ethics? How would we have a code of conduct of what is right and what is wrong? So firstly, this is Ram. Ram comes to first establish that. First understand what is right, what is wrong. So the second level, if the authority, if the Lord himself is advocating, break that dharma, like he did with Karna. He told Arjuna, kill him now while he's unarmed. And Karna was protesting, how can you do that? I'm unarmed. And Krishna was saying, now you want to follow dharma. Now when it suits you, you want to follow dharma. But when other things were happening and other times, Draupadi was being disrobed, all of that, then that's not a dharma at that time. Now when it suits you and you in the position, and you are in the hot pot, now you want to follow dharma. Krishna said, kill him, Arjuna, shoot. Arjuna shot his arrow and he killed Karna. So we see the same thing with in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. Who is the person who speaks the most truth? Who is the person who speaks the highest truth? It's Yudhisthira. So if Yudhisthira had to say something, everybody knows it's not a lie. He's Dharmaraj himself. So Krishna told him, the only way we're going to kill Dronacharya is if you lie and say that Asvatthama is dead. And Yudhishthira said, I can't speak a lie. So Krishna said, I'm asking you to do it. He said, still, I can't do it. He was so attached to morality. You see, morality is a good thing, but when you're so attached to morality, you can't even transcend it. And Krishna is saying, but I'm asking you to do it. And he's saying, no, I can't do it. So it just shows in our study analysis that in order to understand what is Krishna, you only can understand him with love. Because even the gopis, he had to ask them, you come in the middle of the night, how do you do that? And there's nothing moral about that. It's all immoral. It looks that way. But if the Lord is calling, if Krishna is calling, then how is it immoral? So you have to understand the both. And bear in mind, can you see how intricate this is? And this has been explained in 1968 to a Western devotee. Just see Prabhupada's erudite scholarship, that he's able to explain these deep, intricate aspects of Vedic culture. Actually, there's no such discrimination between Western devotee and non-devotee and devotee. I'm just using those words to explain this point of how do you expect a Western mind who's brought up in a different culture to understand these kind of intricacies. Even those born in the Hindu, Indian culture don't even understand these intricacies. So this is a glorification of Srila Prabhupada. His great ability to explain the deep insights, imports of the Vedas. Yesterday we were talking about that verse. Yasya deve para bhaktir yata deve tata kuru. That for one who is implicit faith in the spiritual master, the deeper imports of the Vedas are revealed. So we see Prabhupada goes on to explain this point. In the case of Vasudev, now he's doing a comparative with Vasudev. So first he explained Dasarath's behavior, and now he's explaining in Gram Leela, now he's explaining Krishna Leela. How did Krishna's father respond to him? We saw how Ram's father responded to him. How did Krishna's father respond to him? In the case of Vasudev, we find that he was spiritually more advanced than Maharaj Dasarath. So this is a very interesting point. In terms of the Leela now, he showed more spiritual advancement. So Prabhupada is explaining this. Vasudev was also in agreement with Kamsa that he would deliver all the sons to his hand as soon as the child is born. But in the case of Krishna, he broke his promise. You see, he kept his promise for all the children, but when it came to Krishna, he broke his promise. So he's also a king, but here when it came to his son, he broke his promise. So we're seeing a comparative study, such a beautiful comparative study between these two pastimes, between these two devotees who are playing the roles of father, who are serving as father to the Supreme Lord, and how each one responded and reacted in a similar situation. And Prabhupada is giving that deep comparative study here in a simple letter. So it's really amazing. Prabhupada goes on to say, the point is that Krishna appeared as the fully fledged Supreme Personality of Godhead, but Ramachandra appeared as an ideal king. Therefore, in the Leela of Ramachandra, principles of morality and ethics as they are to be followed by ideal king and ruler was followed. So we can see why he behaved in that way. His goal was not a love of God. His goal was establishing morality, ethics, ideal, the ideal human being. Because that was the mood of Ram, that was what was being demonstrated by him. So we see in Krishna Leela it was different. Prabhupada goes on to say, in the same sense, he banished Sita in order to prove himself as an ideal king who wanted to make his subjects always happy. So you see, the mood is different. Ram Leela, the mood is different, and Krishna Leela, the mood is different. So it's a very beautiful comparative study. We're going to stop here because I want to really complete this letter, and we'll continue it tomorrow. So I hope you're getting a taste for this beautiful comparative study. Please join us again tomorrow. Hare Krishna.